Okay. The Committee on Military Veterans and Homeland Security will come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Chair Conlon?
Present.
Representative Carter?
Here.
Shannon?
Present.
Rogers?
Here.
Wagella?
Here.
Song? Present. Markkinen?
Here.
Bazat?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
St. Germain? Here. Quorum is present.
Thank you. Representative Ugella moves to adopt the minutes from the June 11th, 2024 meeting. Seeing no objections, the minutes are approved. So welcome back, everyone. It's good to see you all since we met last June. I hope everybody had a great holiday. We have only one bill on the agenda today. Sorry, 3 bills technically. And so we're hoping we'll get through this quickly. I'd also like to welcome Brock Thaler, who is shadowing my job today and my legislative director's job today, who's sitting out in the audience. Thank you for coming from DeWitt High School. Welcome to committee. I would like to note that HB 6134 and 6135 are not on today's agenda. So anyone who wanted to speak to those bills, they are not before the committee today. So first we will be taking testimony on HB 6144 through 6146, which is a Representative Braybeck price package. Joining them is Reverend Chris Yaw, Director of St. David's Firearm Disposal and a board member of the Coalition to End Gun Violence in Michigan. Representatives and Reverend Yaw, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Morning, Chair, colleagues, good morning. Thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be able to testify. This package of bills ensures that firearms that are obtained through forfeiture in buyback programs, so something that is being utilized more and more, or guns that are forfeited or used in the commission of a crime, are destroyed permanently and removed from circulation. We worked in concert with the Michigan State Police on these bills every step of the way, and with our national and state partners in the gun violence prevention arena to ensure that we were able to get the spirit of what we were trying to do, which was the complete destruction of these weapons. So what we're really looking at here is that prior to a year ago, we found out that when MSP received these weapons, they were part of them was being destroyed, but not the entire thing, not the entire weapon. And what was happening is that those parts were then being resold and distributed back into circulation. And so folks were turning in their guns, thinking that, voluntarily turning in their weapons. They wanted to turn them in, and they thought that they were being destroyed, but they weren't. In fact, they were then being recirculated. Parts of them were then being recirculated, and it was easy to then create a new weapon. So what this whole package does is close those loopholes to make sure that that doesn't continue. And again, like I said, we worked with MSP on all of these. We made sure that with MSP that they were able to find a vendor so that it is the cost isn't exorbitant for them. They are able to manage this, and it works for them on kind of all fronts. And so again, I just want to be so clear on this. These are weapons that MSP receives through gun buyback programs or guns that are utilized in the commission of a crime. That's it. That's it. And so we're just trying to make sure that these guns are completely destroyed and not then put back into circulation and utilized in a way that's harmful in the future.
My turn.
Your turn. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time and your interest.
In hearing from me today regarding this crucial issue of firearm disposal, I can't tell you how enthusiastic and exciting I am to be here before you today, as together we combat this increasing problem of firearm violence in our communities. So St. David's Firearm Disposal, it's a nonprofit church ministry. We've been receiving unwanted weapons from donors in southeast Michigan for the last 3 years. During this time, we've held 8 firearm collection events, taking in 676 firearms from 61 municipalities from firearm donors whose average age is 63 and a half. These firearm donors have chosen not to sell their unwanted weapons to gun stores, but to have them destroyed. This work was thrust into the limelight in December of last year, as you alluded to, when the New York Times featured firearm disposal in Michigan and the work of our disposal efforts on the front page of the Sunday paper. The story detailed Michigan's former relationship with that for-profit company called Gunbusters. This arrangement allowed Gunbusters to haul away all of Michigan's unwanted firearms for free, about 11,000 firearms in 2022. In exchange, the company was allowed to destroy a gun's receiver, many times just a small part of the weapon, but keep the other parts of the weapon. These parts were then sold online, making Gunbusters millions of dollars. Once this open secret was revealed, St. David's, our legislators, our other stakeholders called on the Michigan State Police Director, James Grady, and we asked him to change this policy. We asked him to see that these firearms would be wholly destroyed. We did not want to see them parceled out for resale. The state police was very responsive. Within 3 months, the state police arrived at an arrangement that canceled its relationship with Gunbusters. Instead, a scrap company in Jackson receives these weapons, they melt them down, and they completely destroy the firearms. I'm here today as a community leader to tell you how appalled I was, along with hundreds of firearm donors and our financial supporters, upon hearing news that weapons intended for complete destruction were in fact being recycled. And I urge you to move this bill forward because of our desire and the desire of our constituents to see that weapons donors freely relinquish for destruction are actually fully destroyed. This should be the law of the land and not left to the capricious discretion of one individual. Now, here's why I'm so vehement about my plea. St. David's Firearm Disposal does much of its work in partnership and with the support of the University of Michigan's Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention. Part of our work together produced a research paper. I think you all have a copy, or it's coming your way. It was published in October of this year, October 28th, in the Journal for the American Medical Association, JAMA. It's called Disposing of Unwanted Firearms and Firearm Injury Prevention. In that paper, you can find a graph that shows that our gun stock in the U.S. has doubled in the last 30 years. Firearms in civilian hands went from 200 million firearms in the 90s to more than 400 million firearms today. This paper goes on to estimate that this count will leap to more than 540 million firearms by the year 2034. What's more, 1/4 of the firearms in this country were acquired passively, meaning the owner did not buy them, but acquired them through inheritance as a gift. This amounts to 100 million firearms in this country. If even a small portion of these firearms are not wanted, we must ponder these questions. How well are unwanted firearms being cared for? How well are unwanted firearms being safeguarded? What kind of public health hazard is posed by having so many unwanted firearms in circulation? How many unwanted firearms would be out of harm's way if there was a convenient, safe, and economical way to dispose of them and firearm donors could be assured of their destruction? So St. David's Firearm Disposal is just one of many Michigan entities who sponsor firearm collection activities. We need to be able to assure firearm donors that weapons they want destroyed are in fact destroyed. Complete firearm destruction should not be a matter of flexible policy, but of statutory law. Please take action on this bill to help our people and our neighborhoods become the safer, more peaceful communities that we desire them to be. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I remember very clearly reading this article in the New York Times, and as a former reporter for the New York Times, applauding that investigative journalism and coming back and speaking to my legislative director and saying, oh, we need to help the Michigan State Police. And before we could do anything, Representative Braybeck had gotten right on this. And I know the MSP was grateful and happy to work with you. Before I open it up to questions from members, I'm wondering, you said it doesn't have an exorbitant cost. What is the cost to law enforcement around, to the Michigan State Police?
So in my conversations with the Michigan State Police, they said that this is something that they can absorb into their budget, their existing budget already. And so that it did not require an extra appropriation or anything like that. And so they're able to work with that vendor in Jackson already within the confines of their budget.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Do we have any questions? Representative Martin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just have a couple questions. So, unwanted firearms, I get that. I mean, when my father passed away, I inherited. But if it was just my mother and I wasn't there, would my mother want them? So she might have sold them. But she would have options. Sure. So my question is, one size fits all. Everything has to be destroyed. There's legal use for is an exception for law enforcement agencies to use parts that come through. Probably saves them some money. But a legal firearm owner that's never been charged with a crime doesn't have that same option. So I'm just saying, it seems like, do you have statistics, 11,000 firearms from gunbusters? How many were used in a crime or even harm in any way? Do you have any statistics from those 11,000?
So I want to go back to your original question, which was about the ability for folks to make a decision. That's exactly what this is about. That folks come and say, two programs that we just heard about, like, I want to relinquish my firearm because I don't want it anymore. I want it destroyed. That is their choice. We're not, you're not making that choice for them. I'm not making that choice for them. They are making that choice. But they have the expectation that it is destroyed. So we're just ensuring, in partnership with MSP, that that's happening.
That's fine with somebody's private property turning it in.
Yeah, correct.
So
and
now,
that is what we're talking about.
Other forms of forfeiture, other forms. I mean, if a firearm is stolen and and they recover it, but nobody comes for the ownership of it. It gets automatically destroyed, even though it's a perfectly working tool that somebody else could have purchased legally from a gun store, even if they got a clean background. So just to destroy everything, just to destroy it, I mean, the criminal that stole the firearm is in jail. He's not going to be creating crime. That firearm sitting there never did create a crime. It was the gun owner or the gun holder that created the crime. So why is it just automatic destruction for everything?
So whatever the policies that MSP has for their destruction of guns, we're continuing to follow that. So if MSP has wider discretion for things, I mean, we are talking about, again, the gun buyback programs, and then guns that are utilized in the commission of a crime, right, specifically. And so those are the times that the weapon would be fully destroyed.
So I just need to clarify this. So under a buyback program, there's no choice of the person saying, I want this destroyed, or I just don't want it in my house.
The intent of, in
right.
my experience, the intent of the donor is coming to our events, because frequently we have people who are in front of the buyback events trying to buy the weapons, is that they want them destroyed. And that they've specifically said, I want them destroyed. And we're just providing that service for them.
I just wonder if there's an option to choose. Thank you.
Rep. Raven, can you just address, if somebody has an unwanted gun, can they still sell their gun? Oh, sorry.
Representative Price.
I just want to clarify the question. If somebody... Okay, so these also don't prevent somebody with unwanted weapons to sell their weapons. They can still go to a gun shop and sell their weapons. This does not impact that freedom. Thank you. Sorry.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you. So following up on this volunteer relinquishment clarification. So my understanding of the intent of this bill is that, which is ongoing current practice, that when people choose voluntarily to relinquish one of these weapons, then they are giving that weapon up, and then local municipalities can have some say as well. There's some time frames in the bills about local municipalities, and then it is going to be destroyed. But if that person would choose not to, there is no one forcing them to do this process. Thank you.
Not at all.
Representative St. Germain.
Thank you. Are there any exceptions for collector's items in the bill?
Again, this is people going and saying, I don't want this weapon anymore. If it's a collector's item, presumably someone wants to keep that. So they would not be participating in this, would be my assumption.
I guess, like, let's just say in the family, you have, let's just say my husband, has a collector's item gun, and I'm not into firearms, so I don't know how that. So, and let's just say something happens to him, it's not registered per se because it's a collector's item, and then I take it and say, hey, I give it back to you. So it could be a collector's item or even historic, but it's going to get destroyed anyways.
If you make that choice to go with a gun buyback program, then yes. Okay. You can make the choice to go have it appraised, and then make decisions about what you want to do with it. But if you make that choice to go to a gun buyback program, then yes, and it goes through MSP, then yes, that's what will be happening. But you have that choice. I mean, like I said, go get it appraised and then make decisions about, with that information.
But what if I don't
choice.
Actually own that firearm? Let's just say it was, in the family, or does that make sense?
Well,
I think you're going to have to deal with a gun dealer in terms of how that's meted out. But certainly, as the service that we supply, it simply goes into the law enforcement's hands. They run serial numbers. They do the ballistics on it, and they honor the donor's wishes. If they're coming and they want a gift card for their weapon, we don't supply gun collectors there to appraise weapons.
Thank you.
Representative Wigella.
So I think you've essentially answered this, so maybe a little paraphrasing here, but I imagine, not a gun owner myself, but I imagine if you were a gun owner and you wanted to get rid of your gun, but you didn't want it to be destroyed, you would just sell it or give it to someone who is going to sell it. You have that ability. This bill affects no one's individual decision what to do with a weapon. And I think just important to point out, we have more guns in this country than people now. So I think there are a lot of people in communities who notice that and want to get rid of their firearms and want them to be destroyed. So just again clarifying that if you have a weapon that you don't want to be destroyed, the logical thing to do would just be to sell it, or they could just give it to a family member or however else it's done. But this is specifically dealing with people who are trying to get rid of their weapons.
That's correct.
No other questions? I have some cards to read in.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your testimony today. Not wishing to speak, but in support of the bill, Kathy Tang with Everytown for Gun Safety. Not wishing to speak, but supporting the bill, Ramya Swamy and Kelly Sampson with the Brady United Against Gun Violence. Not wishing to speak, but supporting the bill, Sergeant Travis Fletcher with MSP. Not wishing to speak, but supporting the bill, Sean Holohan with the Giffords Foundation. Oh. Okay. Wishing to speak and opposing the bill is Robert Stevenson, Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. You can have the floor. I think you've asked for 2 minutes, so.
I'll be quick. And with your permission, can we ask Deputy Director Dan Fanis from the Michigan Sheriff's Association?
Sure.
That'll help keep it quicker. We won't
Yep.
be duplicating
Okay.
each other's testimony here.
You have the floor, gentlemen.
Thank you. On behalf of the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police, I'm Robert Stevenson, the Executive Director. We represent about 1,300 law enforcement professionals and about 400 police agencies. We listened to the earlier testimony, we read the bill, and while we are hearing the testimony that this bill is intended toward MSP and the Michigan State Police and perceived problems with their procedures, this bill also greatly affects local police agencies. I think there's some unintended consequences from this bill, from hearing the testimony and what's written here. This would basically prohibit any police agency, local police agency, from also doing anything with their firearms other than destroy them. Now, many of the police agencies do take some of the firearms that they seized from crimes and such, and eventually do sell them back in, and there's a procedure in the law for how they're sold back. And they use those funds, and they require those funds because money's tight in a lot of the police agencies, and that's how they upgrade some of their arsenals with the money that comes back from this. So again, this is, unfortunately, it also affects all of our local police agencies. There's no exceptions inside the law, and I was chief in Livonia for a period of time, and it was not uncommon that somebody actually would show up at our front desk, and they would say, we have some firearms here that we got for whatever. We just want to give them to you. You guys do with them what you want. And we could take and auction those off to bring funds back to help our police agency. Under this legislation, that would no longer be a possibility. Dan?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. My name is Dan Faunus. I'm the Deputy Director for the Michigan Sheriff's Association. We represent the collective interest of Michigan's 83 elected sheriffs, so a significant portion of law enforcement. By way of background, I have 43 years in law enforcement. I did my first 25 years in the city of Westland, where I retired from there as its chief of police. I did my next 15 years with the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, where I served as the undersheriff. This is something that I feel intimately familiar with, and one of the things that I would like to do, if you'll just indulge me for a minute, is a lot of times when people were talking today, they talked about the bill. If I can separate these out, the Michigan Sheriff's Association has no position on 6144. Whatever the Michigan State Police want to do with their firearms once they've ultimately been sent to them for destruction purposes, we have no say in that. We have no interest in affecting their policies. But when it comes to 6145 and 6146, that doesn't affect the Michigan State Police. Those firearms haven't gone to them. That affects the local law enforcement. The almost 600 law enforcement agencies, police and sheriff's offices in the state of Michigan. While some agencies are very well funded, others are not. Others require or beg for other agencies, for example, to donate them used bulletproof vests because they don't have the budget to allow them to buy equipment. There are a lot of agencies that encounter people, as Chief Stevenson said, people come into their front desk and say, hey, I just don't want this firearm anymore, and I really don't care what you do for it. So when we talk about this only affects firearms that were slated for destruction, that's not true. They come into police custody through a multitude of means, whether it's people bringing them in or they're seized at crimes or they're abandoned, etc. And we believe that there's an interest in repurposing these, whether it's for trade, which would be prohibited. And for example, just by way of analogy, when I was with the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, we had 500 aged revolvers that were of no value to us. And we were able to orchestrate a trade for a firearm that our on-duty personnel were actually carrying, and it helped offset the taxpayers' costs for us to purchase those duty weapons. So we believe there's a vital purpose here for law enforcement agencies to make the choice to sell or trade them. This legislation would preclude that, so we're in opposition to 6145 and 46, and we have no position on 6144, and we're willing to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Does anyone have any questions for these two gentlemen? And Rep. Price, would you like to take the microphone and answer some questions perhaps about that? Thank you. I'm going to let the representative behind those two bills come speak. Thank you for your time today. You have the floor. Thanks, Rep. Price.
Yes, thank you. Rep. Raybeck, do you want to come up too? Just a few points of clarification that I wanted to acknowledge as well. When law enforcement officials receive weapons by donation, as was cited, these bills, he is correct that they would not be allowed to be traded or sold. They could be retained for use by the officers of that agency. That is up to the discretion of the agency whether to retain and use them themselves or to destroy them. So I just wanted to clarify that. I also wanted to clarify that their weapons that their agency has purchased that have not been donated to the agency, we're not changing what can happen to those weapons. as part of these bills as well. So just wanted to clarify those 2 points. Anything else that needs clarification? No. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have wishing to speak, opposing the bill, Tom Lambert with Michigan Open Carry. You have the floor.
Thank you for your time today. I always like to say in committee that people opposed to firearms don't know what they're talking about and they don't care. I've said that so many times over the past year, and this is just the epitome of exactly that. Well, we're not opposed to guns, we're just opposed to gun violence. Well, no, you're definitely opposed to guns here. You just want property destroyed. That's really all it is. You want something with value destroyed. And let's be very, very clear here. You want something with value destroyed regardless of what the person who gave it up intended. That's very important. You heard that some people come to these buybacks saying, I want it destroyed. That's true. I've attended many buybacks. I really like buybacks. It's kind of a secret. Because I go to these buybacks and I buy guns for really, really cheap. And I have a lot of nice guns in my collection that I purchased at these buybacks from people who were there. They didn't want their guns destroyed. They just maybe didn't want them anymore. And you know what? $100 gift card to Meijer, that sounded good to them. I purchased firearms from one woman who she was handing in her late husband's firearms. She didn't know what to do with them. She didn't want them destroyed. She just thought, a couple gift cards to Meijer, that sounded good. The vast majority of people that show up to these events don't actually care what happens to their firearms. Plenty of people show up to these events with absolute junk. That's another somewhat of a secret. You hear people like, I think the Flint mayor saying, look at our buyback, look at all the assault weapons that we brought in, all the evil guns we're taking off the street. My organization has extensively used the Freedom of Information Act to find out what our municipality is actually getting in these buybacks. And surprisingly, we've had a lot of resistance. We've had to engage in numerous lawsuits to actually get this information out. And the reason is when you actually get the information of what these municipalities are getting, the vast majority of it is just absolute worthless junk that people then claim, well, they're taking firearms off the street. Today, the state police, local law enforcement can decide what they do. They can destroy the firearms. They can sell the firearms, and as you heard, take that value and return it back to themselves, use it for local crime prevention or maybe their own equipment, or they can do something else with it. If a buyback wants to partner with local law enforcement and actually ensure that something will be destroyed, then establish that up front with the local law enforcement. It's as simple as that. We don't need any legislation for that to happen. But what you actually end up with is, again, I'm going to go back to what I started with. And I started with it on purpose. People don't know what they're doing, and they don't care. You had somebody sitting before you today, sitting in the same seat that I'm sitting in now, the gentleman over here from, I think it was St. David's Firearm Disposal, talking about there's articles and videos of him online. Absolutely true, committing a lot of very serious felonies and misdemeanors, including of violating laws that this body recently passed. Videos of him and his people unlawfully acquiring firearms. Should we be prosecuting that or no? I forgot. Unlawfully manufacturing short-barreled shotguns and short-barreled rifles. Unlawfully obliterating serial numbers. Unlawfully altering firearms. Again, multiple serious state and federal crimes. The brazenness with what they do to this stuff is amazing, that they're so willing to do this stuff on camera and let it be posted online. Anybody else would be prosecuted in a heartbeat. But what about these people? If they're committing the crimes, committing many, many, many of them, where's the prosecution here? Or is it that we just, frankly, don't know what they're doing, what they're talking about, and they don't really understand what's going on? The last thing I'm going to say is, today's new for me. I never thought I would come here and actually see anti-gun people shilling for the gun manufacturing industry. I said that right. Shilling for the gun manufacturing industry. It's very surprising. You see, any market out there, any product, Apple is a huge one. They know their biggest competition is their used market. You hear a lot of stuff about right to repair, farming equipment. That's really huge there right now. People want to repair their stuff so that they don't have to go buy new things. But the manufacturing industries don't want people to repair equipment so that they have to come and buy new things. The more new things you have to buy, the more money the manufacturers make. Well, if we're just going to destroy a bunch of product out there that would otherwise have value to it, what's the alternative? I guess there's less used stuff on the market. Everybody has to go buy new stuff from the firearm manufacturers. Congratulations, firearm manufacturers. You have now the anti-gun industry shilling for you. Congratulations. What you should end up doing, just so we wrap this in a bow, is leave the law right the way it is. Let law enforcement agencies decide. Do they want to destroy something? Do they want to actually take some of the things of value and get the value out of them? Sell them to a firearms manufacturer or a firearms dealer, have them go through the background checks and all that kind of stuff. Rarely, antique firearms are turned in. They often come from people who find them in a closet, they don't know what they're doing, they turn them in. We've discovered some of these antique firearms in the paperwork that we get through litigation, again, trying to figure out what they're being turned in. These are not people who want these antiques destroyed. They're turning them in because they don't know what they have and they don't know what to do with them. Again, I'm not opposed to buybacks. I'm not opposed to people relinquishing firearms. All we're opposed to doing is this one-size-fits-all approach of saying no matter what the intent of the person was, you have to destroy something of value. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony today. Do we have any questions? Oh, Representative Bizat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The sheriff brought up some issues. As the sheriff of Livingston County, I was allowed to use weapons, and then we chose to turn them in to the state police, the ones that were inoperable. And we even did the trade buyback, like was mentioned earlier, to upgrade our weapons. That would all be taken away with this bill, the way I read it. But I just wanted to make that clear that, you know, you're taking discretion away, and I don't see the state police supporting this. I know you said you worked with this.
Forgive me, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You worked with the state police, but the stakeholders, I was curious if the Chiefs Association...
They are in support. Yeah, the Michigan State Police are in support of the bill.
Well, they're not on here as supporting the bill, but clearly the Sheriff's Association, the Chiefs Association is against it. It violates the sheriff's rights and the chief's rights as well. So I just wanted to mention that. You're taking away discretion from local sheriffs and the chiefs of police on how to determine whether that weapon, and the other thing that is clear, that needs to be clarified, these are weapons that the department can use or sell back to law-abiding citizens. So I think that needs to be clarified. You're taking discretion and how these things, especially the collector weapons, you know.
To your point, Representative, there was some clarification just before me that said that the bills don't prohibit local law enforcement for using the firearms for their own purposes. And that's true, but as you well know, a lot of the firearms that you get in, the department itself has no use for these firearms. Maybe 22 rifles or pistols or older shotguns or some of these collector items that some of the collector items might have a lot of intrinsic value to them, I mean, many thousands of dollars for this particular firearm, but there's no way the department is going to use it. Their use is not in the firearm itself, it's in the value that they can obtain by selling that to a law-abiding person.
Well, I hope to your point, we destroyed thousands of weapons that were either dangerous to be resold back into the market or junk. And so local law enforcement, chiefs, sheriffs, and the state police, quite frankly, destroy thousands of weapons annually. So I think that needs to be said here. It's not like we keep all these weapons and redistributing, you know, to the criminal people out there. That's not true. There's thousands and thousands of weapons that are being destroyed yearly. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I can just offer something very briefly, and this is to no one in particular.
Briefly, because we have other people who want to speak.
I apologize. It's to everyone and no one. A number of years ago, we organized a buyback in Battle Creek, and I would say this is the model that should be done. If nobody wants to do this, you don't have to do it. We got firearms dealers together with the local Battle Creek Police Department. When people came in to hand in their firearms, the firearms dealers would give them a price. You have something of value, I'll give you this much. It's more than the gift card you're going to get. If they didn't have something of value, then it was turned over and it was ended up destroyed because nobody actually wanted it. But the involvement of law enforcement was necessary to make sure something wasn't reported lost or stolen or that kind of thing. When you have everyone working together, you can actually better suit the needs of addressing people who have firearms, they don't know what to do with them.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony today. Next up, wishing to speak, opposing the bills, is Nick Bougie from the NRA. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I just want to start off by saying I think that they created the assumption that people that participate in these programs want their guns destroyed, and that if they didn't, they'd simply sell them. I think that is a huge assumption, and the opposite is true, that if they did indeed want their guns destroyed, they're more than welcome to seek out these types of programs and have them destroyed. These bills do not address programs to destroy guns for the public. They address gun buybacks and confiscated firearms. These bills create an unfunded mandate and place a financial burden on the state's law enforcement agencies by requiring they destroy firearms. This mandate runs counter to how law enforcement handles any other item that is legal to own that they may have confiscated. Instead of allowing law enforcement to sell firearms at public auction, as they do with other items, to individuals authorized to own them or sell them to FFLs to help fund law enforcement activities, these bills mandate that the state police destroy them with no ability to recoup that cost by selling unregistered parts to fund the destruction of registered parts. The bills also don't explicitly authorize the state police to contract this work out. That authority may be inherent, but if it's not, do the state police have the means and ability to carry out this mandate? 6144 requires that state police destroy all firearms given to them by a municipality that were purchased in a buyback. The bill does not require that municipalities turn over these firearms, however. Is it assumed that the municipalities can sell these firearms to fund municipal expenses? In addition, firearms acquired in any other way by a municipality, such as a voluntary surrender, would not be subject to destruction. This creates a confusing and burdensome system for both law enforcement and local leaders. Once more, muzzleloaders and antique firearms would be included in this mandate. These are often exempt from these requirements or firearm definitions, yet potentially more lethal weapons are not required to be destroyed. In 6144 and 6145, local law enforcement would be required to turn over firearms to state police, and again, it requires state police to destroy them. However, local law enforcement agencies have the ability to retain these firearms for official use instead of sending them off to be destroyed. Why aren't the state police afforded this option? The state police they don't have the option to retain firearms given to them. It mandates their destruction. The state recognizes that local agencies may want or need to retain these items, but does not recognize that for the state police or its citizens. In conclusion, this removes a revenue stream currently open to law enforcement and replaces it with an unnecessary expense they have no way of recouping. At the end of the day, what are these bills achieving besides creating a cumbersome system where the state is mandating that a legal-to-own product be destroyed some of the time, but not all of the time, by some law enforcement agencies, but not all law enforcement agencies? Thank you, and we would hope you consider opposing these bills.
Thank you for your testimony today.
Yep.
Any questions? Okay, we have one more person wishing to speak, opposing the bill. It's Donovan Gomez. And the floor is yours, Mr. Gomez.
Hello. So the destruction of weapons. I don't know if anybody ever heard of Archimedes. Give me a lever and a firm place to stand, and I shall move the earth. The formula for gunpowder is out there. I mean, like these buyback programs, somebody could engineer it, 3D print it, or they could basically get a CNC operating machine and basically, make one themselves. So, and also with these buyback programs, even if there was an illegal gun, that's basically putting more an expense at the taxpayers' dollars, for, if a dangerous gun, but I never seen a gun that actually killed anybody by its lone self, except it was a person. And I never seen anybody die, hopefully never. But, so these buyback programs put only increased costs to the taxpaying citizens. So 6145 weapons concealed, sale of weapons seized by law enforcement agency. Oh yeah, well, basically on a ground level, I'm not a part of all these big titles, we're not. Tyranny. Let's go into it. So, so we found this pistol over here. Oh yeah, it was just voluntarily submitted. So we're just gonna keep onto this for you for safekeeping. Something that I worked my butt off for, which now under 18 U.S.C. 922 G4, underneath the mental health code, that these petitions that are freaking going around. And I remember when Tom was on the steps and we were protesting it too. And they were like, well, what should we do? You have to voluntarily forcefully comply, but that's a different story. So somebody could just build a gun. They could do anything like that. Shout out to the Livonia PD for having a big drug bust, because they actually did one of the biggest ones. If I wanted to be a snitch because I don't want to see those drugs funneling through my community, I'm pretty sure these people aren't going to, go through the, the motions of our legal system. They're going to use lethal force, and they will kill. That's what it's about. That's why they carry guns on the street. And in some cases like that happen in Detroit. So what these laws do, any gun control laws, only hinder the law-abiding citizen. They're not going to hinder the criminals. Criminals are going to find guns. They're going to get them off the street, whatever way you want to. But we have to ask ourselves, when it comes to all these gun control laws, the deeper moral philosophy of the direction of where our society is going. Are we paying more attention to illegal immigrants and putting precedent over them, or basically prioritizing American citizens? When they ask me, what set do you rep? I rep the state of Michigan. I don't represent Bloods, Crips, or whatever these vigilantes describe themselves as. I represent the state of Michigan. I mean, you have to be elected official, and Saginaw County is where I'm from. But, so... I oppose these bills. Because
thank you. I can only give you another 30 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, e pluribus unum out of one many. I was lied on through these petitions, and basically I find myself in this entire systemic cycle of legal issues. It's not the person, or it's not the gun, it's the person. So more laws, they only hinder more law-abiding citizens.
Thank you for your testimony. Would the sponsors like to close on anything, or are you all good? Okay, thank you. Seeing no further business before the committee, and without objection, the committee is adjourned.